Israel's history is fascinating, especially when it comes to its lack of a formal written constitution. It's a topic that ties deeply into the country's founding, its identity, and even its current political struggles. So let's dive into this story, unpack its roots, and explore why Israel operates the way it does today. By the end, I'll explain why I believe Israel already has a divine constitution, the Torah, and why I can't support a nation unless it aligns itself with God's standards for governance. When Israel was established in 1948, its Declaration of Independence laid out a vision for a democratic state with a constitution. The United Nations resolution that supported the creation of Israel also expected this. But here we are, over 75 years later, and there still isn't a formal constitution. But why? The reasons why are historical, political, and yes, ideological. David Ben Gurion, Israel's first prime minister, was one of the key opponents of drafting a constitution. He believed that constitutions were too rigid and could limit the will of the Democratic majority. In his eyes, laws should be flexible and adaptable to changing circumstances. He pointed to Britain, a successful democracy with a written constitution, as an example to follow. But Ben Gurion wasn't alone in shaping this decision. See, deep divisions between religious and secular groups often played a major role. Religious fractions argued that the Torah already served as the Jewish people's constitution. But on the other hand, secular groups feel that enshrining religious principles in law would lead to excessive religious influence over governance. At the time of Israel's founding, immediate survival took precedence over everything else. The 1948 Arab Israeli War was raging. They also had mass immigration was underway, and the economy was fragile. Drafting a constitution simply wasn't practical amidst such chaos. There was also the issue of representation. You see, many Jews from the diaspora hadn't yet immigrated to Israel. So drafting a document meant to represent all Jewish people felt premature. Let's not overlook political strategy here. The ruling Magpie Party, led by Ben Gurion, benefited from not only having a constitutional limit on its power. Smaller parties wanted a constitution to protect minority rights, but Magpie dominance allowed them to avoid such constitutional constraints. In 1950, Yizar Harari proposed an interesting solution. Instead of drafting an entire constitution at once, Israel would create one gradually through basic laws. These laws would act as a semi constitutional chapter addressing specific areas like governance and human rights. The first basic law came in 1958 and focused on Knesset, which was the Israeli parliament. Today, there are 14 basic laws covering topics like human dignity and freedom. However, these laws aren't entrenched. They can be overturned by a simple majority in the Knesset. This flexibility has led to ongoing debates about judicial authority and the separation of powers. Over the years, there have been multiple efforts to draft a formal constitution. For example, in 2005, the Israel Democracy Institute proposed constitution by consensus. In 2006, Knesset member Michael Eaton presented another framework. Despite these attempts, ideological divides have prevented any real progress. Questions about what it means for Israel to be both Jewish and democratic remain unsolved. Should it lean more towards a religious law or a secular governance? What about its non Jewish minorities like the Muslims, the Christians, and the Druze? These are tough questions with no easy answers. Now let's fast forward to today. Israel is facing massive protests over judicial reforms that could shift power from the Supreme Court back to the government. Critics argue that these changes threaten checks and balances and could lead to the authority in power in the absence of constitutional safeguards. Supporters claim that the Supreme Court has too much power and doesn't represent Israel's diverse society. This crisis highlights how deeply divided Israeli society still is and how much it struggles with defining its identity and its governance structure. Would having a formal constitution have presented this crisis? Maybe. But a constitution could codify checks and balances more clearly and provide stronger protections for civil liberties. But let's be honest, achieving consensus in such a diverse society is incredibly difficult. You see, Israel is dynamic. It's made up of people from all over the world with different beliefs, priorities, and also cultures. That diversity is both its strength and its challenge when it comes to creating something as fundamental and foundational as a constitution. Now, here's where things get interesting. While Israel doesn't have a man made constitution, it already has something far greater: the Torah. For thousands of years, the Torah has been the guiding framework for Jewish life and governance. It lays out God's standards for justice, morality, and also social structure. Religious leaders during Israel's founding argued that there was no need for another constitution because they already had one given by God Himself. And honestly, they were right. The Torah isn't just a religious text, it's also an incredible legal document that addresses everything from property rights to social welfare to the judicial system. If followed faithfully, it provides a blueprint for creating a just and righteous society. Here's where I stand. I can't support Israel or any nation that doesn't align itself with God's standards for operating a country as outlined in the Torah. You see, a nation that claims to be Jewish but ignores God's laws is missing its true purpose. Israel has an opportunity to be a light unto all nations by embracing its divine constitution fully, not just in theory, but in practice. Until then, I will always remain critical because I believe anything less is falling short of what God intended for his chosen people. So there you have it, a deep dive into why Israel doesn't have a formal written constitution and why I believe it doesn't need one, and all it has to do is to embrace the Torah as its ultimate guidebook for governance. But please, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Israel should draft a modern constitution or return fully to its biblical roots? Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.